Welcome back to the class. So this is a continuation of the previous video and I'm just going to go right in. So a quick information that I want you to know about layer masks, because I mentioned it earlier and I think some of you got a little confused because you're beginning to wonder what layer masks do and why was I changing the colors on this side, foreground color to black or white. By the way, for you to change your foreground color or swap the colors, basically all you need to do is tap X on your keyboard, or if you don't want to tap X, just click any of these arrows here. You can see these two arrows here to move between foreground and background color. So the one up is called foreground color and the one below is called the background color, and we can change them anytime. You can change it to yellow, you can change this one to red. It's really up to you, but the basic foreground and background colors are white and black, and I would advise you to leave it as white and black when you're doing your work, except you need to change them, but most times you don't need to change them because these are the basic colors you need for your background and your foreground colors. Okay, so talking about layer masks, let me just quickly talk about that a little bit. So the default layer mask for Photoshop is the white layer mask, and for this white layer mask you need a black foreground color and your brush. This is the brush tool. Okay, so you can see this. Let me just tap. I basically left clicked for this, or should I call that right click? I think that's left click, yeah, to bring up this dialog box to increase the size of the brush basically. So you can see as I'm moving it, you can see the brush is getting bigger when I move it back. Okay, so that's for the size. This is for the hardness. Basically a hard brush is a defined shape with no softness on the edges basically. So the lesser the hardness, the softer the edges. The higher the hardness, the stronger the edges. So when you use a hard brush on a layer mask, this is your result, something like this. Okay, so I'm clicking Ctrl Alt Z to undo. That's basically the undo button for Photoshop. Ctrl Alt Z. So to use a soft brush, you can see that I tapped on this. So let me just go back to the hardness of 100% I had before, and then I'm just going to drop it down to 0. Okay, so for that, you see this is the effect. So you can see how soft that is. Really soft. All right, so now why do you need a black foreground for a white default layer mask? Very simple. It's because in Photoshop, for you to be able to remove a particular area anywhere you want to take out, anywhere you want to erase or manipulate or whatever you want to do with your brush, with your layer mask, for you to work on that area using a white layer mask, you'd need your foreground color to be black. Without it being black, you will not be able to achieve anything. Let me show you something. Now this is a white foreground color with a white layer mask. So let me brush over this. What do you observe? Nothing is happening. It's just the way Photoshop is built anyway. This principle is not applicable in CorelDRAW or some other software that does not work with this principle, but for Photoshop this is what you do. All right, you use a black foreground color for a white layer mask. Now, is there something like a black layer mask? Yes, there is, and I'm going to show you that right now and show you how it works. So basically a black layer mask comes up when you hit Alt hit your alt key plus the layer mask. So you see what's happening right now. This is a black layer mask and the image is vanished. That's what it does. A black layer mask completely hides the object or whatever you have used the black layer mask for, and the intention is to reveal a particular area. So you can see that I've gone over to my foreground background switcher and I've switched over to the white foreground color to enable me brush over this layer and reveal the image. Okay, so remember the principle: black layer mask, white foreground color, white layer mask, black foreground color. Okay, so I'm going to do this now, so just watch and see what's going to happen. Right, so can you see that part of this image is revealed right now because I'm using a white foreground color? So what will happen if I decide to switch it to a black foreground color? So let's see. This is what's going to happen. Right, so it all goes back to the invisible image that we had initially. So that's basically how those two work. So in the first place, why do we mask an image at all? Well, the reason we mask an image at all is because we want to preserve the original image. So I don't want to destroy the image without being able to go back to the original image afterwards. Okay, so let me show you what I mean by that. So let's assume that right now I want to just take out this place, and this place. Now if I do this without using a layer mask, right, I would have succeeded in destroying my source image. But when I do that with a layer mask, I preserve the original image. So anytime I need to go back or basically start all over, all I need to do is left click, enable or disable the layer mask, or delete the layer mask. The moment I apply the layer mask to any object I'm working on, that object cannot see. Right now I cannot recover. If I try to brush on this image right now, you see what's going to happen. I cannot recover. You can see it's brushing the color of the foreground. Let me change that using my X to the background. Let's see if I can recover. No, it's just giving me colors right now because I have stepped out of using my layer mask. I've basically thrown away the mask. I've applied the mask to the image, so there's nothing I can do to recover this image again as far as the mask is concerned. The only thing I can do is to go get a new image from my background image and then start all over again. But if I want to just save my time, I don't need to start going back and forth and starting all the effects I've done, all the nice things I've done all over again. What I would do is to use my layer mask. Okay, so I'll show you something real quick here because I want to get back to what I was doing initially. Okay, so you can see this panel I'm playing with right now, right? I'm choosing where I am at the moment. So this is called a history panel, and basically you can use this to get back to the beginning of your file. You can see that the other two layers we had here before are no longer there, so that's because I went back to the beginning through the history panel. So please remember that panel. You probably need it sometimes when you're working in your design, yeah. Okay, so I said I was going to show you another tool that is commonly used for cropping. This is like literally the commonest of the commonest. Many graphic designers are guilty of this one, and photographers are guilty of this one. Like, oh my god, very, very guilty. So this is called the polygonal lasso tool, right? And everything here are called lasso tools. So you can see the lasso tool itself, the polygonal lasso tool, and the magnetic lasso tool. So basically this lasso tool, this is how it works. You would have to by yourself. Basically, you draw like you work like you're drawing a pencil. You draw it with a pencil and walk around the edges of the image. Now you can see some settings up here, right? So the most important setting here is this feather radius. Basically, the feather is the softness of the edges. Okay, so you want to keep that at 0 so that you can have a very clear cut. Good. Now this is how the lasso tool works. So I'm going to right click and hold down my cursor while I move around the edges of this image. Okay, so you can see that it's not exactly perfect, but then I'm just going to walk around it just to show you how that lasso tool works. Okay. So just keep going all the way around and round and round and round. Okay, so the reason why I probably got to an extent, say 80% of the shape of his body right now, of his silhouette in this image, is because I've been using my mouse quite often, so I just was able to work around that. So yeah, so let me go ahead and crop this, and you'll notice the imperfections right away. Okay, so I don't need to talk too much. You already can see this. You can see the imperfections in this. As much as this did a better job than the magic wand, rather, you can see that the edges are more defined. They are not as rough as the edges of the initial tool we used, the magic wand. The edges are well defined. Okay, well defined. You can see pixel edges, well defined, really well defined. So but then you have that imperfection. Okay, so the limitation to this tool is that you need to walk around the edges at a go. Just hold down your right click and just keep walking around the edges. So you'd need to be sort of a master of contours to be able to get the entire shape of this person's body at a go. And it's very possible, but then you will not be using a mouse for that. You'll be using something called a Wacom tab. That's a drawing tablet for graphic designers. It has a pen, a stylus, that can enable you actually walk around the edges of this image without really having any problems. But then this is not my best tool because it doesn't give me the chance to manipulate after I have taken my selection. Basically choose how I want some of the edges to be, select the accurate curves and all these kind of things. This tool is very limiting. Okay, so the next tool I'm going to show you is the polygonal lasso tool. So the reason why it's called polygonal lasso tool is because it only cuts straight lines. How would I put it now? It cuts anything. I can use it to cut out this image right now, but then it will always leave edges, polygonal looking edges. Now one of the features of a polygon, right, is that it has edges. It's made up of straight lines, right, that form edges. So let me explain that to you right away. So I'm just going to zoom in a bit and then start from the bottom right here. So I want you to observe what's going to happen. So I'm going to click. Right now this tool does a little bit of magnetism, so it allows me to select where I want to continue. So you can see that I'm clicking. So what do you observe? It does not curve. This tool does not curve. I have to keep clicking, you know, anytime I get to a curved area, I have to click probably like 4 or 5 times to try to use several lines to create that curve, you know. So yeah, basically that's how that works. Okay, so I'll just choose a particular area to select so that we can see the end results because of our time. Okay, so Control O means to zoom to original view. That is 100% fit to screen. So I'm going to tap Shift and I. Right, so we can see this. Let me just zoom over so you can see that. So remember that the hem of this suit is somewhat curved. Well, that's the result. And you also notice other parts of the suit here, like these places, they are more like gentle curves, you know, not really edgy, so to speak. So, but well, that's what the polygonal tool does. Great. So like I said, there are scenarios where it will work, but for this case and pictures like this, I won't advise you to use a polygonal lasso tool or the lasso tool. The magnetic lasso tool, well, this is actually supposed to be a very smart tool, but sometimes it can disappoint you. And you know, once again, it's not as it's quite limiting, so to speak. So you can see what's happening right there. Let me zoom it. It's limiting. So you can see I'm just going to keep clicking. It's just the same lasso tool, but then this one is magnetic. So it's basically what it does is to try to identify the contours by itself. So it's supposed to be a smart tool, just like, you know, you have artificial intelligence. When you're typing on your keyboard, chatting on WhatsApp, sometimes you get suggestions. So that's basically what this tool is doing. It is trying to find the edges of this guy's body, of this image, trying to find the edges of the subject in the picture, so that it will enable me to get the right result. So let's see how well this did the job for us. So I'm going to just go right here and come all the way down. So you can see it is choosing the edges by itself. All right, so I don't think you want to use this tool anyway, because it doesn't really give you the flexibility you want to have. All right, so you can see my screen right now. That's Control 0, right? I said Control O, but you know, sometimes we call 0 O, right? So but basically this is Control 0 for me to view in full screen. That is fit to screen view. That's Control plus 0. So you can see that again on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and invert the selection. I believe by now you know what I mean by selection. So you can see that Control Shift I to invert, and then I'm going to go ahead and use my layer mask, and voila, this is the result. So let's zoom right in and see what was done. So you can see that the tool actually tried, you know. You can see a better curve right here at this point, you know, all these areas, yeah. But then you can see the very smooth edges, but this is not still a perfect cut. That's one. Two, it does not provide me the leverage of editing my selection around the edges. I would show that to you when I introduce it to my magic tool. So, but basically, these are the common tools used in cropping pictures, and like I said, I will not advise you to use them in this scenario. Alright, okay, for pictures like this or photo, those really nice photo editing looking pictures, those really nice studio pictures that we take, and some other complex pictures, I won't advise you use these tools just yet. There are scenarios where they will be used, and in the course of the trainings you get to see those scenarios. But the focus of this training is actually to create a birthday poster design. But like I said, my workflow is allowing me to teach you about the tools that would have been used to create this design, and then also show you the tool I will use to crop the picture and then create the design, basically just to expose you to the tools so that you can now start getting acquainted with the tools in Photoshop. Okay, so I believe you've learned something new in this class today, and so go ahead and watch the next video so that we can continue, and then I'm going to show you my choice tool for cropping an image. Thank you very much. See you in the next class. Bye bye.